Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in the Illuminance podcast. And this session today, I have a rather exciting surprise for you. I'm going to be joined by Kemal, co-director of a small charity, and I'm very excited to be diving into the conversation today, which gives us a really interesting opportunity to observe how high sensory intelligence works in different roles. And as you know, my wish is to help you as a listener to really understand how your own high sensory gifts work, for you to be able to understand the importance of the role that high sensory intelligence really plays, the ability that we have as HSPs to see more deeply into the world around us in a particular area that really interests and fascinates us, and how that allows us to enhance our work, enhance our responsibility in the world to really support the world into balance and peace, and to really enhance the areas that we're most excited to be working in. So Kemal is a co-director, as I say, of a small charity which supports other charities and responsible businesses to strengthen their leadership, influence and impact. And most of his work over the last 25 years has been in international development. He's been involved in a diverse range of projects in various countries, from conflict transformation initiatives in Cameroon to working with children from former untouchable communities in India. Wow. Since developing his own relationship with high sensory intelligence, Kemal is passionate about exploring the role it can play in leadership for a more compassionate world. Let's dive in. Illuminance specializes in developing sensory processing sensitivity, a natural high sensory intelligence present in 30% of the population, co-creating with the power of humanity to consciously evolve towards balance. Great to see you, Kemal. A very, very warm welcome. Thank you for joining me on the session today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Willow. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. So yes, it's a great opportunity for us to have a look at what high sensory intelligence really means, especially in the role that you are performing in the work that you do, and to really open up the conversation a little bit in terms of, how you found it operates in your role, how, your area of life and what fascinates you, and how it serves that. And really just to explore, the advantage that it brings to your role. So if I was to ask you just to begin there, tell me a little bit about, since you've become aware of what high sensory intelligence means and how it operates in you, tell me a little bit about how that has enhanced your work or affected your role.
Sure. So, it was thanks in large part, Willow, to having gone through the coaching course and with you, and really deepening my understanding of what high sensory intelligence is. Before I'd gone on the coaching course, I think I was very aware that I was sensitive in particular areas, but I wasn't really sure how to harness that, how to deal with it, how to work with it. So, and as a result, I think I spent a lot of time in my head, and I have an academic background, so I did a PhD researching caste discrimination in India. So it felt like I'd been trained to use a particular type of intelligence throughout my life. And whilst that's served me reasonably well, I haven't felt that it's allowed me to really sort of tap into a deeper intelligence and harness what I would call the sort of wisdom of the heart, the intelligence that comes online when your heart is connected with your head, that's connected with your courage and your will. So it was thanks to the coaching course that really helped me to sort of deepen my understanding of how high sensory intelligence is really about finding that alignment, finding your truth, and then being able to operate with your truth in the world. And how it's impacted me in terms of my work. I do various things at work. Sometimes I provide sort of coaching support for some of the leaders in the non-profits and charities that we work with. Other times we might be facilitating a session for staff or trustees of charities or volunteers in charities, helping them to look at their strategy or look at their culture or look at how they could be a more impactful and effective organization. So coaching, facilitation, and I've noticed in both of those circumstances, high sensory intelligence really helps me to tune into the energy, whether it's on a one-to-one basis, the energy with the person that I'm coaching, or the energy that's in the room if I'm facilitating a bigger session. And what I've experienced is that the more I am quiet and still and listen to how I'm experiencing the energy in the room, it's an invaluable navigation guide for when there's perhaps an issue that we need to dive a little bit deeper into. It's like a breadcrumb trail that someone will say something and you'll say, that's the real issue we need to look at. Let's ask a few questions around that. Let's start exploring that further. And there's a embodied intelligence that sort of comes into play there, where you know when people are speaking their truth, and you know when people are less in touch with their truth. And I think that's how the sort of high sensory intelligence and faculties have helped me to sort of navigate in all sorts of different ways to understand people's truth.
Wow, I love that. Thank you. I love how you described that. It's really interesting how you began there with the awareness that perhaps this ability has always been there for you, but how we tend to have that habit of being in the head and knowing sometimes that there are these other gifts that are available to us, but sometimes not trusting those, or perhaps not owning them. But now, how wonderful it is to hear that you are now in ownership of them and that you are trusting them, and just what that's making possible, right? So I love how you describe that when you are in conversation, that you're able to feel the room, you're able to sense the flow of the conversation, but most importantly, to feel when someone's actually speaking from truth or when they're not speaking from truth. And I mean, that is such a powerful ability, but one that we can often, not really be utilizing or really be owning that it's there, right?
No, absolutely. And I mean, just in terms of on the high sensory journey that through the coaching course, Willow, you helped me to understand how the way that my high sensory intelligence operates is very much to do with a sensing into when there is conflict or separation or disharmony, and being very aware of when there is either a conflict situation or something is dissonant. It's not feeling harmonious. And I think what I discovered, it was, right from an early age, this was as a result of having grown up, my mother's English, my father's Pakistani. I grew up in quite an ethnically homogenous community in Suffolk. I was acutely aware as a child of, do I belong? Do I fit in? How do I connect with the environment around me? And if I didn't feel like I was connecting, or if I felt that there was prejudice or discrimination or exclusion, going on, it was something that, touched me very deeply. And I just thought that was this is just a sort of a personal thing, Kemal, that you feel saddened by. But I realized actually that ability to sort of tune into, when a community feels connected, or when individuals feel like there's a sort of a resonance between human beings, or when there's a separation, a division, a dissonance between human beings. I've realized it goes way, way beyond just the sort of issue of race and skin color. It's actually, it's an energetic thing that I've been experiencing all my life, but I haven't been able to put words to it or to understand it. But now that I'm beginning to sort of understand it, then I tune into how my body's feeling when I'm aware of dissonance, or I'm aware of conflict, or I'm aware of disharmony. And it'll be very much a sort of a constriction. I will feel a sort of tightening in my body if something feels out of alignment, or if there feels like there's disharmony there. And conversely, if I feel people are speaking from a place of truth or love or beauty, or all of those higher frequency energies, I'll feel it in my body. It'll be an expansiveness. It'll be yes, this feels right. This feels there's an equilibrium here. There's a balance here. There's a harmony here. There's a beauty here. Often a beauty and a joy. And the more I've learned to trust this embodied knowing, and recognizing that the sort of, the intelligence of the head is a useful servant, but not a very helpful master. And actually the energy I should be tuning into is the embodied intelligence. That served me. It's been invaluable as I've been sort of working in coaching scenarios or facilitation sessions or in conflict situations themselves.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yes. This is such an important piece. I love that you've brought this into the conversation, that our own journey through life and our own conditioning plays a very important role in the area of how our high sensory intelligence works, which makes a lot of sense when we think about the way human purpose works. We're all given a natural area of competence and then an interest in that area, but then we're also challenged in life within that area. So for us as HSPs, when we understand that, when we think back to the theme that's been happening through our lives, we can then get an insight into, so my ability to process more deeply is actually designed to serve in a particular area. So I love how you've shared that, now that you're aware of it and now that you're able to utilize it to sense when there is conflict or when there is dissonance energetically within someone, and reading that and trusting that response in you. So rather than, assuming that maybe there's dissonance in you've now learned to read that that's actually happening energetically outside of you, and you're able to respond appropriately to then bring conversations back on track, or to be able to coach accordingly.
I think the word that I picked up in all of what you were saying there, Weller, was trust. And I think that's absolutely at the heart of it. It is, we can almost sort of second guess ourselves and sort of talk ourselves out of that trust if we rely on the intelligence of that, I didn't feel that, or maybe that's happening somewhere else, or maybe I misread the situation. And as soon as you start going down that line, you can feel your body tightening up. The piece is there is really to trust it. And it takes a while to gain that sort of, it's high sensory confidence, I guess, that your high sensory intelligence is to be trusted. There's an intuition there, or an intuitive intelligence there, that the more that you can learn to trust it, the more that it will stand you in very great stead, and to do whatever it is that you're doing in life in alignment with your purpose and your work and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, the trust piece is key. And that is what can hinder the utilization of high sensory intelligence, is that we don't necessarily feel that it's real, or we're so used to being in the experience of it that we don't understand its value, or we're not trusting that it has purpose in some way. And that almost kind of initiation into self, into high sensory intelligence, is such an important step. because then it really allows us obviously to build relationship with it. It's only going to grow and develop with us as we go. But then we truly understand our value. And and you've given such a good example of that, when you are, whether it's, working with heads of an organization or even tribal leaders or in the coaching scenarios that you work in, how you've come to be able to trust what you're feeling, but also your intuition and how it's guiding you to facilitate conversations. I'd love to hear, a little bit about how you've then learned that is around conflict resolution, or perhaps just around purpose, how you've noticed that develop.
One project that I was very passionate about was it was a conflict transformation project in Cameroon, in the northwest of Cameroon. And crop farmers and cattle herders were essentially sort of fighting over access to natural resources, so access to water, access to land. And just as a little bit of background about that conflict, the cattle herders were semi-nomadic, and they had occupied the highlands in Cameroon, in northwest Cameroon, and the indigenous farmers were growing crops in the valleys. But with climate change, the farmers were moving up to try and find more fertile land, and the cattle herders were bringing their cows down to get better grazing land. And they were coming increasingly into conflict, and because they both wanted the water, they both wanted the land. And so I worked on a project to support dialogue between these communities, help them access shared use of resources, something called alliance farming. But I remember facilitating a session it was about sort of 30 or 40 mixed crop farmers and cattle herders, and I didn't know it at the time, but this was high sensory intelligence in operation, Willow, and it's only in retrospect that I understood this. But we were talking about one of the, there were many causes for the conflict. There were ethnic dimensions to it. There were religious dimensions to it. There were practical livelihood dimensions to it in terms of, who could get the water, who could get the land to graze their cattle or grow their crops. But we were talking about discrimination and prejudice that happens within the communities that leads to or exacerbates the hostilities. And I just remember feeling like that, that it's almost like we're dancing around, and no one was being open and transparent in the conversation. The conversation was very guarded. And because we were talking about prejudice, I said, didn't a wise man once say, "Judge not, lest you be judged yourself"? And immediately the quality of the conversation changed, because I think both, Jesus is a prophet in Islam, he's a prophet in Christianity. So, the cattle herders were Muslims, the farmers were predominantly Christians, but both could align around this sort of deep wisdom that emerged from, a person, an individual, a human being that both communities respected. And it almost brought the sort of a heart intelligence into play, whereas previously people had either been reacting, through their entrenched positions. And now the quality of the conversation changed. And what I've understood subsequently, I didn't understand it at the time, was that if you can sense the energy, then it's not just about reading the truth. You can actually contribute with carefully chosen words to support the transformation of that energy in a particular context. It's like the transmutation of energy. And like I say, I didn't understand it at the time. I'm just beginning to understand it now. But it's a very, very powerful thing when you tune in to not only your own truth, but the energy and the truth of what's going on in a group or even in a one-to-one situation.
Yeah, amazing. Yes, yeah, this is such a good example. Such a great example. Yes, because it's what's so wonderful about this example is your ability to be able to read into the bigger picture of what's happening, and sensing that there is a solution that is a common good for all, right? That, to be able to use this land in partnership is the solution that really both parties are looking for. Neither really wants the other to starve or not survive. But you're absolutely right. It's expected that there's going to be disharmony and there's going to be prejudice in some ways, of course. But what's wonderful about how you've described that is to be able to see the bigger picture of the natural flow that's really trying to find its way in. To that transmutation from conflict into a mutual benefit that is going to lead to, what other good things it will lead to. And that's really what love is trying to do. It's trying to help the humans involved to see that there is a harmonious solution here that's actually going to move everybody forwards. And to be able to trust that, right, in the way that you did, to be able to see, I can feel what's happening here. And just by using the right words in the right way, and also by actually embodying that energy in yourself, that you were able to then switch the conversation and transmute it in that way.
And again, it comes back to trust, and it comes back to, there is a, for want of, many words have been used to describe this energy and how this energy flows. But, there is a sort of a divine intelligence, a higher intelligence that wants to come through and very, very much. And almost it's allowing yourself to be a channel through which that intelligence can come in a seamless way, in a way that it wants to come through. So it's almost about getting out of the way and allowing what is very powerful and naturally wants to flow anyway to do what it wants to do. To dance, to love, to experience, happiness and joy. It's a natural flow that wants to come into a situation. And I find that it's often by quietening down and slowing down that you can hear it, you can tune into it, because it's almost like a whisper that wants to come through, and we need to turn up the dial on that whisper to be able to hear it and enable others to hear it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, because even if others are not able to quite see it in the same way, there's still going to be a part of them that feels the presence of that. So, in other words, it's such a good example of great leadership to be able to sense what love is trying to do, what the greater vision is, and how everybody has a role within that greater vision. And to be able to hold the space to allow others to really experience the potential of that vision and the potential of that energy that's trying to flow through, then we're able to help others to have an experience of that in a way that then moves everything forwards in a way that's conducive for all, right? So it's that leadership piece, I think, that's so important here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's like, we possibly talked about this before, but it's like tuning forks, isn't it? Coming in, you hit one tuning fork on the table, and it sort of starts to resonate at a particular in a particular way. And if you've got other tuning forks, that haven't necessarily been struck on the table, but they will also start to resonate in synchronicity, in syncopation. I'm not a musician, but I understand that principle of energetic resonance. I think that's really at the heart of high sensory leadership or high sensory intelligence. It's once. And I think the Heart Math Institute have done a lot of work around this as well, in terms of how hearts start to resonate at the same frequency when there is that sort of connection. And I think that's what high sensory intelligence enables us to do. It enables us to sort of bring a coherent energy of the heart into any situation. And once you've brought it in, it's like those tuning forks. Others in the group, if they can get past the sort of discordance, get past, the narrow sort of blinkered self-interested perspective, if they can start to, I think it's an opening up, isn't it? And that's where the importance of vulnerability and openness and transparency comes in, because it enables hearts to start beating as one rather than lots of disjointed heartbeats, which is, I think, where my sort of high sensory that's how I feel it. It's that feeling of, if there's conflict, if there's dissonance, I'll be very aware. But when it's almost like, people's hearts start to sort of beat as one, start to come online and come into line with each other, then there's a beauty to that just feels natural and right and harmonious. And, I feel it in my body as soon as it's in operation.
Yeah, amazing. Again, it's such a great description of how that works, and I think, the opportunity that we have to see that we each have an ability in our own area of expertise that operates in the same way as that. So, as part of your gift is to be able to sense the resonance and sense the tuning forks, and to tell when someone is still sitting on something, or if someone's not feeling safe enough to be as open and as vulnerable as they could be, then a part of your role as a facilitator is to help to work through whatever's in the way to get everybody to align, which then gives the opportunity for that greater intelligence to come through the conversation or come through the organization in whatever the context may be. But having that subtlety in awareness and having that sensitivity to be able to read the energy in that way, and not to compromise until we know that the resonance is where it should be in order for the true outcome to take place, or the true potential to take place.
No, absolutely, Willow. And I'm intrigued to sort of ask you sort of how you experience these. How does your high sensory intelligence operate? When you're in similar sort of coaching situations or facilitation situations.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so my ability is very much around reading potential in people and purpose in people. So my version of my high sensory intelligence is again dictated not only with my innate gifts, of course, but the way in which I've been challenged in life. So my challenge through life has always been around empowerment and the blocking of purpose and the blocking of potential. So I came through a series of challenges that trained me in this area that I had to overcome personally in order to be able to do the work that I do today, but also to really understand what my gift is trying to do through me. So in my example of this, if we're talking about a group situation, then my high sensory intelligence and my heart is very much geared towards helping everybody to find the truth of their potential and the truth of their purpose within the greater context of perhaps a goal or an outcome that the group is looking to achieve. So my ability is to able to read what's happening energetically in each of the people that are there in relationship with a higher achievement or a higher goal of some kind. So I can feel what's happening within the goal itself, and then I can feel what's happening within the individuals themselves. So in other words, the potential of the outcome is very much dictated to by the people that are involved, but also by the higher intelligence that's also running through them. So in my experience, there's a balancing act to help people to understand their value, their importance, their purpose, and then to see how they are actually able to be a conduit and play an important role in the outcome of what's trying to be achieved.
And it struck me, Willow, as you were talking that there's obviously that, you know, we each have our different flavors of how we experience high sensory intelligence, and you know, a lot of that is to do with our life journey and what our life has been training us all along for. But what I noticed in terms of there are some sort of similarities there, aren't there? In terms of, you know, I think both you and I experience, you know, where there are blocks and what is necessary to liberate the energy, that so it's no longer blocked, whether that's liberate the energy of someone's potential or liberate the energy so that there's greater harmony and resonance in a group rather than conflict and separation. But it I think it comes back to that, allowing what naturally wants to flow and come through, to find the riverbed that will allow it to flow, rather than, you know, take away the dam, and enable it to flow in the way that it wants to flow.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So you know, what I've noticed through working with HSPs over the years is that we all are really in the business of truth, and we're all in the business of reading the energetic nature of truth. And that is typically working with blocks in whatever area of expertise we are operating within. So even if, say, an HSP specializes in well-being and coaches on a one-to-one basis, to understand what's in the way of well-being, it can boil down to numerous factors, such as it may be to do with nutrition, it may be to do with work and purpose, it may be to do with relationships. And a person that specializes in well-being is going to be able to sense and read the higher vibrational truth of someone when they're in alignment, when they've got those pieces in place. And they're going to be reading the blocks that are in the way of that. So whether they are super stressed at work because they're in the wrong role, is that affecting how they're eating? So what's going to happen is, as they're having conversations, they're then going to be reading the blocks and facilitating through those blocks and bringing the healing through that's possible to bring that person back into alignment. So we're all, in a sense, kind of doing the same thing, but we're using a different faculty in terms of what we're reading more deeply, and then a series of techniques that we have to actually facilitate that transmutation.
And the word that I picked up there, Willow, was healing, because that feels right at the heart of all of this as well, doesn't it? Whether that's sort of healing a group that's in conflict, or whether it's healing someone because they are out of alignment with what their greatest potential is, and so that enabling them to recognize and live their greatest potential is a sort of it's a healing process, isn't it? Or if it's about well-being, it's very clearly about, if they're out of alignment with a state of health or a state of inner well-being, then whoever has that high sensory faculty will know it, will see it, will understand it, will tune into it, and help that person to heal at a deep level. So it's a sort of a making whole what has been disjointed or separated or fragmented.
Yes, that's a really good way of putting it. Definitely, yes. I think that's a great way of describing our ability, is that we are really picking up on reading what is out of that holistic nature of self. If there's parts of us that are blocking the true flow that's possible through us, or whether there's a lower frequency block within us that's caused through conditioning or belief system in some way, that's actually out of alignment with the higher frequency of who we really are. And I think when we actually think about the greater context of the world, we're actually on that journey as a race. If we look back at our history and our journey, we are evolving from a conscious awareness point of view, and we are making huge advances in areas of life very well. Of course, there's a great deal of work to do. But I think our ability as high sensory people is really in alignment with the nature, the goal that nature has in evolving us towards a higher frequency and towards that natural truth of self, which knows balance and knows harmony.
Which is why, Willow, I think that there's a real need and a deep calling for sensitive leaders, isn't there? Leaders who are able to harness, tap into, take ownership of their high sensory faculties, and because it's like being the sort of the midwife or the hand, to be able to sort of give birth to or contribute to the birthing of an intelligence that is already there but wants to come through and is already on that. As you say, this is the evolution of human beings, is the evolution of human consciousness, and that consciousness it's never staying still. It's even though we can go through ups and downs, and I strongly believe it's on a trajectory for towards higher or a deeper sense of love, a deeper sense of wholeness, a deeper sense of harmony. When we look around the world at the moment, it might not look like that, but I strongly believe that is just the natural course of where this intelligence wants to go. And leaders that are able to embrace that intuition and the deeper empathy, it feels that there's such an important part of that intelligence coming to fruition and being able to flow in the way that it needs to and wants to flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have this tremendous opportunity as leaders to embrace this reality, because we all sense and feel it intuitively. We know when we're on balance. We're aware when we're taking a course of action that is only for our own benefit individually. That if we're abusing resources, or we're abusing each other in some way, or we're on a track that is not for the greater good, we can sense and feel when that's happening. And I think that gives us a great opportunity as high sensory leaders to be able to be the voice for that, and to be able to encourage people to speak up and say what you're feeling is right, and the fact that you are, the fact that you want to be a part of a greater movement towards balance and towards higher frequency, that we're able to really facilitate something that is a natural next step for humankind anyway. We're not making up something that is from a pipe dream. We're actually working in alignment with a natural movement that's already there. And I think it's our role as high sensory leaders to utilize that ability and to encourage others to recognize their importance and role in that movement too.
And I think so much of it comes down to sort of confidence and trust, doesn't it? I think sort of if you'd asked me sort of 20 years ago, do I want to be a leader? I would have said, absolutely no way. Leaders are, sitting on their horse, charging from the front, and that's not me. I prefer to blend into the background, not be the loudest voice in the room, not draw attention to myself, all of those things that, just prefer to spend time in nature or on my own or in a quiet room. I don't want to be sent, So I think we've got to move away from that notion of, sort of that heroic leader to actually there's a deep need and a deep value to high sensory leadership, which isn't necessarily the sort of the gung ho heroic leading the charge from the front leader, but it's a quieter type of leadership. But it's, in my opinion, it's a much more powerful type of leadership because it enables us to tune into something that is, way deeper, way more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think also, I love how you brought that to the conversation as well, because I think there's an interesting opportunity to reframe what leadership really means. and that that we're really moving from the model of leadership, which is all about control, into the utilization of everybody's skills, and recognizing that really we're the facilitators of something greater that's working through us in whatever it is that we're leading, and to recognize that we have this opportunity to be able to observe and to be able to support and facilitate the truth through a scenario without having to take on that conventional leadership role, which is, being that kind of loud, extroverted, driving force that may well be appropriate in some areas. But I think we have an opportunity to recognize the importance of being able to observe, respond, and facilitate and empower people through that process to understand their role in the greater good.
No, absolutely, and I love what you're saying there, Willow, in terms of an opportunity to sort of almost share the leadership, which is intelligence or leadership intelligence, leadership confidence. It doesn't sit with any one individual or one human being. It's something that comes through. And that's why the small charity that I work for, we have 4 co-directors. We each take joint and shared responsibility for leadership, and that's about recognizing that there is a much deeper intelligence as the result of us sort of working together in a leadership capacity than one person saying, "I've got all the answers. I'm the authoritative decision maker here." As you say, in certain circumstances in the world or in life, that it sometimes needs people to sort of step up and have that leadership confidence. If you're in certain situations, but there is a type of leadership that I think we as high sensory people are particularly attuned to, particularly adept at, which I think is very necessary in the world, and perhaps hasn't been given the value or appreciation of just how important it is. I think lots of people talk about the highly sensitive person as the royal advisor, don't they? Perhaps you'd like to say a little bit more about that, Willow, and how that contributes to leadership as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's a very important piece to look at, because we're not really very far from the tyrannical leadership model being the type of leadership that we're all used to, right? Which is very much about the man or the woman being in control and being almost like being in like a god state, where we all just go ahead with whatever they say or say we must do or mustn't do, versus being able to actually sense and pick up on the greater intelligence of what's happening, what's trying to come through us, and everybody's role within that. And I think the royal advisor role is a really good a way to understand that, because if you consider a person in power, there is going to always be that fine line of, am I making a decision for the greater good here? Am I making the decision from my own good? Am I making the decision from fear? Am I making a decision from love? And having an HSP at high level within leadership roles, or as a royal advisor to someone as an advisor to someone at a high level, is able to actually read and sense the energetic movement of what's happening, whether the person in leadership is coming from a place of alignment or not, and how we're actually able to read that, and how we can sense the bigger picture of the effect of that energy, and to be able to articulate that in a way that helps people understand, which is, of course, very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's the trick there. Really, is to trust that our perspective and our voice is needed, and that we can bring great benefit to whatever role we play in our lives, whether it's at work, at our home lives. It is to trust that we are reading this greater fabric of life, and to learn to be able to share that in ways that people understand. So we're not, we're not kind of isolating ourselves by using language that people don't understand, or by, or by worrying other people that they can't see these things. That we're very, sensitive in the way that we provide that information. In the way that we articulate that, so people can really understand the benefit of the perspective that we're bringing. I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So a very, very exciting way to look at this gift of high sensory intelligence. And it's been wonderful to have been joined by you today, Kemal. And thank you so much for your input and your examples that you've given. And it's given us such a great understanding and perspective of how the gift works, and I think really to encourage others to trust that they have their own version of this ability. No matter what walk of life we come from as an HSP, we all share this gift, and such an invitation to really explore that at an individual level.
Absolutely, Willow. Yes, pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, thank you again for being here today. And yes, if you have any questions as a listener, please do reach out in the comment section below, whether you're listening on YouTube or on one of the podcast platforms. It would be wonderful to hear from you and to support you on your journey. And of course, to check out the Illuminance community. It's free to join, and there's lots of resources there. We very much look forward to supporting you on your own development and awareness of your high sensory intelligence, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much for joining us.